Mr. Edward Uy is the Vice President of the Project Management Office at Kelley Blue Book. So if you are not getting a good price in your car, I'm putting pressure on him. Ed and I go back, way back. He and I started our MBA program at the University of California, Irvine, about 20 years ago. So it's interesting to see where we both have landed up in our careers, and I'm very proud of him, and am glad to share his expertise with you this morning. Ed?
Okay, so I have to thank Mark for putting me in this position because I'm the thing standing between you and lunch. I suppose the only other position that I'd dread more is probably Jeff's position, which is last in the day. So thanks, Mark. Yeah, Mark and I go back a long way, and I'm very pleased to have the opportunity to speak to you about some of the things that we've been working on at Kelley Blue Book for the last 5 years since I've been there anyway, and even before that. And that's in the software development space. These concepts around agile software development have really taken hold, and if you haven't heard of these trends yet, it's something to at least take a look at. It might not fit every organization, but I thought I'd give you a flavor of what that's about, as well as how we've applied it at Kelley Blue Book and our journey through these recessionary times and tough economic situations. So what I wanted to cover briefly is just a little bit more about Kelley Blue Book, our current situation, the recession itself and how that's impacted the automotive market and the media space that we play in. And then you really get into the meat of it with the Agile software development discussion. Agile software development really covers a lot of different disciplines. I'm going to talk more specifically about the Scrum software development framework, which is a subset of that, and how we've actually applied that here at Kelley Blue Book. I'm going to talk about the trends, because if you haven't taken a look at some of these methodologies, I want to help you understand why you should at least understand them if you haven't already started applying them. And then some of the other considerations that really lessons learned through our last several years. I'm going to talk a little bit briefly about our situation and how we're positioned to take advantage of the recovery as well. And then I'm going to do a quick wrap up. Okay? So, Kelley Blue Book. We've been around for over 80 years. I'm not sure if people realize that. We've been providing vehicle values, whether they're new car values, used car values, auction values, transaction values, and so forth, for over 80 years. For many years, we've been known specifically for the Little Blue Book. Everywhere I go, people ask me, do you still publish that Blue Book? Absolutely. We just don't sell that many of them anymore, right? Everything is basically online, and it's free. So, the next question is, well, how do you make money? We are a media company, okay? We have a lot of eyeballs coming to our site. 14, 15, 16, 17 million unique visitors every month to our site is quite a large number of people. So we are very much a big media player in this space. We also have mobile solutions for the iPhone, BlackBerries, and so forth. But we also have a host of other products that people aren't aware of for the automotive dealer groups, the OEMs, finance and insurance companies. This is an extremely large industry, and we support that industry with our advertising partners, with market intelligence tools, business intelligence tools, lead development products, and so forth. So we really have a broad, diverse product set, but really the face of our company is KBB.com. Okay? A couple of things that you should also be aware of is we are a private company, and we're not that large. So our situation might be a little bit different than your own. Okay? Being a private company, we're not having to comply with Sarbanes-Oxley in our industry. We don't have to worry about HIPAA. So we have a lot more flexibility to do some things. And also, being a smaller company, we tend to move a little bit more quickly. We are roughly about 600 people, okay? And actually, we were much smaller at the beginning of 2000, 2001. So we'll get a little bit into that. Okay. So a little bit about the last few years. Leading up to the recession, we had been going through a period of strong growth. Lots and lots of hiring. And we're 600 people now. We were actually about 100 people back in the 2003 timeframe. We had lots of technology upgrades, lots of new products coming out, and we had to improve the operations to support these growing numbers of folks hitting our website. Our first foray into the Agile practice were back in 2006, 2007. Because we had all these new people coming online, we had to be able to handle this growth, how to develop through that, and continue to deliver products to our customers as they expect. Now, one of the things that we follow as part of our success metrics is the Net Promoter Score. And as many of you know, this is an indicator of how well your customers perceive you and want to promote your products to their friends and families. So our Net Promoter Scores have traditionally been in the 50 to 60 range, really world-class. And we've been able to hold and maintain and even grow that through this time period and even in these difficult economic times. So we've been able to put these processes into place to keep delivering these products. In 2008, we all know what happened, right? We were having a run rate of about 16 million new cars a year up into 2007, 2008. Lots of eyeballs on our site, lots of cars being sold. Okay, well, we all felt this way as soon as the recession hit. We went down to roughly 9 or 10 million vehicles sold every year, and it really took an impact on our ad partners, the folks internally, and basically the entire industry went into this survival mode. Very difficult situation to be in, as we all know. Okay? But through this whole period, we were working through these agile technologies and methodologies in order to continue to deliver value for our customers. Okay? How many of you are familiar with the Agile Manifesto? Can I see a show of hands? Okay, so there's a handful of you. Okay, so this should be very familiar. The Agile Manifesto was put together by a group of very smart folks back in 2001. Folks like Jeff Sutherland, Dave Thomas, Alistair Cockburn. These are folks that have been developing software for years. And they needed to get together and describe a way to determine what is the best way for people to develop software. And they consolidated their thoughts into these basic premises. Individuals and interactions over process and tools. Working software over comprehensive documentation. Customer collaboration over contract negotiation. And responding to change over following a plan. Now, these folks also knew that these items on the right are very important. They just happen to value those items on the left even more so. So it kind of ties into what Kathleen was saying regarding collaboration and people working together, being more open to take chances. Okay? So individuals and interactions over process and tools is extremely important because this migrates us from the mindset of, as a manager, we know better, we'll tell you exactly what to do on your teams. The mindset nowadays with folks practicing software development with agile practices is, you guys are the team, you guys know best because you guys are hands-on, and you figure out what the answer should be. Okay, we'll set up the guidelines as managers and what we want, and our goals and our targets, and you guys see if you can meet those goals in the best way you think is available. Okay? So as we're talking about agile software development, that's the broader set. It's an umbrella set of terms for things like XP programming techniques, pair programming, test-driven development. I want to talk specifically about Scrum. And what Scrum is a framework that describes how people should work together. Okay? It's not how to do things, it's how people should work together. So when we look at developing software, product managers are the ones who usually decide what to build. Okay? That person is certainly important, and he or she will define what it is that's actually going to have to be built. But the difference here is that with a prioritized backlog cut up into small sections, we're actually delivering software in small increments. Every couple of weeks, you get to see the progress. You don't have to wait 6 months, 9 months, 12 months to actually see something that is of value to the customer, especially with products like websites and lead tools and so forth that are constantly changing. You have to show something every couple of weeks to keep those folks interested and seeing that value. And this allows the opportunity for that team to review themselves every couple of weeks. Okay? What's also important is the daily engagement. You don't just throw the requirements over the fence anymore. Okay? The product owner is there to work with the team, to answer questions, and to make sure that what they deliver after every couple of weeks is what they were looking for. And you're going to be closer to the customer requirements and desires than you would be if you waited 6 months, 9 months, 12 months in a waterfall environment. Okay? The last point is extremely important. This is the retrospective part. This is the part where the team actually has to talk amongst themselves with their Scrum Master facilitating that and say, hey, what did we really do well this time? What didn't we do well? And what are the things that we have to solve for in order to do continuous improvement? This is basically Kaizen for the software development world. Okay? Okay, so what have we done with Scrum at Kelley Blue Book? We've continued to provide these new products and services, as I said, through this growth pattern, but we've also improved the operational capabilities and the service level agreements. So I was saying earlier that the product manager is basically saying, these are the things we need to work on, new features, new enhancements. But that product owner also has to represent those folks who on the technical side and the operations side have to make sure that site's up and running, okay? So the new shiny objects that the execs always want you to chase after also have to be building in operational capabilities. Absolutely. We couldn't support 17 million unique visitors a month if we didn't do this several years ago. It had to be part of the plan, okay? So that's an important point, that we continue to provide value, not just in enhancements, but also operational capabilities for sustaining that product. The next few items are just examples of how we've been able to change with the market. Scrum allows you to change your baseline, and it's expected to happen. So the first one is an example where we moved from providing values on a monthly basis, because our books are have been published on a monthly basis for decades. With the recession hitting, you have things like gas prices skyrocketing, you have SUV values plummeting, you have Priuses that are 3 or 4 years old that are actually worth as much as a new Prius sticker price. New Priuses actually costing a couple of thousand more than sticker. These changes are happening very rapidly, and in order to respond to those market changes, we had to change our product sets to support weekly values. So without this kind of system in place, we wouldn't be able to support that. Cash for Clunkers. This, as everybody knows, was a wildly successful government program. Now just think about that for a second. Have you ever heard of a wildly successful government program? It happened, and we were ready for it. It came on very quickly, and it disappeared very quickly. All those billions of dollars were given out by the government to help spur the economy, and it worked. But we were able to sustain those millions and millions of customers coming to our site because we had the operational capabilities in place, and we were able to react quickly to the market conditions. We were able to change our product backlogs in order to deliver that value for our customers. And lastly, the Toyota recalls of earlier this year, again, caused a lot of changes that required, specifically on our website, but we were able to react to those as well. Okay. This one isn't really talked about as much at the conferences we go to, but this really speaks to the ability for a company of our size, we are able to move people from one team to another very smoothly because we all speak the same language, we all understand the same framework, okay? The examples I just gave earlier with the Cash for Clunkers and the weekly values projects, we actually did move individuals from one team to another, and sometimes entire teams move from one department to another to help out in these efforts. But because we were able to speak the same language, have the same expectations, and even bring on consultants that also knew about Scrum and were experienced in it, we were able to execute very quickly, okay? And probably one of the most important things with this is the executives have an understanding of what to expect. These product backlogs and release plans are available for everybody. There's full transparency, okay? Now, some of these things might be uncomfortable for organizations that are siloed off, but the advantage is the expectations are very much available to be managed easily. Okay. A couple of other things that we noticed, as of late especially, is we're able to bring on top talent. People want to be involved with this kind of software development environment. It is the leading edge of software development, and not every company, based on their requirements, legal requirements, regulatory requirements, their old systems in place and so forth, they'll have a harder time attracting these kinds of folks, okay? Even product management, who is used to working in the Scrum environment, those folks are coming on because they understand that they have a lot of power and influence and ability to work with these teams to deliver products very quickly to the market. Now this one, this last point, is really a double-edged sword. Scrum can expose the organizational challenges early. So every 2 weeks, every 4 weeks or so, you can see if a team's actually performing and delivering, okay? If you're a team member and you're on a team that's not doing well and you're not making those improvements, that's not so good. But you can also take a look and see what the backlog was, what the changes were that were required, those things that were injected into your sprints that the executives put on you. So is it the team or is it the executives? Double-edged sword. You don't really know. But at least it's exposed and out there quickly so you can react to those situations. Okay, a little bit on the trends. This is a Forrester study from last year, about a year ago. And you can see that the respondents said about 35% practicing Agile. 30% not practicing anything in particular, okay? That was Kelley Blue Book actually about 7, 8 years ago, so you know, we all start from somewhere. And then some of the more traditional software development methodologies followed. And again, Scrum is a subset of the Agile methodology. About 10% said they practiced Scrum. This last point was from a different report from the Gartner Group, and they predict that by 2012, about 80% of all software development projects will be using some form of Agile methodology. That might be a little bit high, but you know, directionally, I think it's important to take note of that. So I wanted to make sure myself if this was really accurate. And so I went on monster.com, not for myself, but you know, just to see. Just to see what was out there. But I typed in a few keywords, and I typed in developer for LA and Palo Alto, and got these numbers. And Agile and Scrum are roughly about the numbers that you would expect out of that survey. And the same goes for iterative, RUP, waterfall, CMMI, and so forth. Actually, those are a little bit lower. But again, directionally, that's the kind of things that I want some awareness out there for you guys. Okay. So over the last couple of years, some other considerations, some other lessons. And this one really speaks to a team-focused culture, this first point. Not only did we implement Scrum, but as an organization, we were rolling out Patrick Lencioni's 5 dysfunctions of a team. Okay, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of this teamwork-based model, but it was extremely effective because it matches Scrum. This openness for collaboration, the ability to provide a closed feedback loop so that everybody can trust each other, get their ideas out on the table, get a commitment level from the team, and hold each other accountable. Okay, so it wasn't just Scrum, but all these other changes that were happening at the same time that helped Kelley Blue Book get through this tough economic period. We've heard this a lot today, executive support. It is not a cliche, absolutely necessary. Who else is going to approve the training that's going to be required? Who else is going to support these changes with the culture and bring on new people, new ideas? Environmentally, for collaboration, Scrum is extremely dependent on face-to-face conversations, right? Agile Manifesto said people over process. So you need to have that kind of support. And as well as the other tools to support the framework. Okay. This next one might be a little bit more specific for those of you familiar with software development groups. Job roles will change with this kind of environment. A primary example of that is the folks that manage development groups, those development managers and directors. They're now not telling people what to do. So what do they actually do if these teams are self-organized? This has always been a tough one. Well, these teams need folks that still provide guidance for their career paths, recommend training, be able to put them in teams that they can be successful and move personnel around as needed, and also to set the guidelines and targets for these teams. So these jobs are still very important, but they're going to be different. And these changes can sometimes cause a lot of consternation in the organization. These changes take time, okay? We went with a big bang approach. We got it over with in 6 months. But the dip in productivity was much longer than that, okay? So something to be aware of. These changes will take time. And lastly, the reason I started off by telling you about Kelley Blue Book being a private company in our marketplace and so forth is because the Agile methodologies aren't necessarily for everybody, but I think they can be used in many parts of different organizations. You have to assess that for yourself. And you know, the readiness for change is also necessary to understand. Okay, so you know, through these past few years, we have been doing much better, actually, even through this downturn market. We're holding our own. But more importantly, we're continually looking at providing more value for our customers. We're focused on improving our products and services where they matter the most, and with Scrum, we're able to do that. We still need to invest in these technologies and practices. You know, like, as I said earlier, the Agile methodologies are very broad, and Scrum is only a portion of that. We still need to improve ourselves with QA automation, continuous integration, and many other facets of engineering practices. But that's what we'll continue to invest in. And the pressure for talent is heating up. You know, I just showed you Monster.com. There's 600 plus jobs for developers if you're looking in a couple of key areas. But we are seeing a lot more competition for the best and the brightest. And for days like today, we are continuing to share in the community because when we come out to these kinds of events and speak at conferences, we're exchanging ideas with folks not just in our industry, but in various other industries, and we take these ideas and we pull them back into our organization, and we help people understand what's been working for us and the challenges that we face. So I'm just going to have a quick wrap up here. Just a few key points. If you haven't already started looking at the Agile technologies and methodologies, take a little time to understand those trends, okay, because they can be beneficial. Assess your organizational readiness, and if you do go down this path, make sure you do get professional help, get some consulting in place. You can't just order 100 books from Amazon and drop them in the teams and expect this to happen. This is going to take some time. Cultural changes may be needed. Change is going to be hard for some folks, especially if your organization isn't used to a lot of collaboration, a lot of openness and transparency. Executive support, essential. And it is going to take a while. We're still working through this ourselves, but it has been very beneficial, and we really positioned ourselves to get through this recessionary period, which I hope will end very shortly, but we've already seen an uptick in auto sales this year, so things are looking a little bit brighter. So that's all I had for today. I'll take questions for a couple minutes, I guess. Yes, in the back?
Have you found, or maybe the question is compared to my experience, my experience, especially with a methodology like Scrum, where essentially business analysts and programmers are working so closely together so much of the time, I find that the business analysts sort of come over the dark side and become, they start thinking more like IT, and that maybe we shouldn't have the same business analysts always working with IT. Are you experiencing anything like that?
We haven't actually experienced that, and I think it's because we have a smaller organization. We actually are moving people around to different teams to keep things fresh, and in fact, folks on the business side do join the Scrum teams, and some of the tech folks are actually moving out into some of the other areas of the business. So we do a lot of cross-pollination. I think that helps balance everybody's approach. Yes?
You sparked my interest when you had a point on investment in culture, and I completely agree, and I have my own ideas, but I wanted to hear from you. What do you mean by investment in culture, and maybe some quick thoughts on what those ideas would be as far as application?
Sure. Well, certainly the first would be, a key foundational component that we had put in place was the 5 dysfunctions of a team framework by Lencioni. And, generally, I would say 90% of the groups have gone through that team building model, and we have folks in our HR department that are trained facilitators to support that. We also are generally more family-oriented company, so we have things like picnics and get-togethers that keep us closer together. And also, we do have some celebratory events when we have big launches and things like that. But we also have found that when the executives put out small bits of information, quick emails, maybe they'll have informal gatherings, hallway gatherings, people will just talk about things that they've been doing and talk about success that way. So those are examples of the cultural approach we've taken. Any other questions? Yes, in the back.
That ended up being a perfect segue to what I wanted to ask about, which is in your organization, in the people part or the talent side of things, do they actually deploy some form of Scrum or some form of Agile in their own day-to-day operations?
So you're saying outside of the technology groups?
Yes.
So our company does not practice that at this point. There are a handful of companies that use product backlogs in, let's say, the marketing department, the finance department. It's not really widespread because that really comes from the top down. And what you'll find is the folks that have that in place are folks like Jeff Sutherland. Jeff Sutherland is one of the key founders of the Scrum framework, and his companies all use the Scrum framework from top to bottom. Rally Software, who develops tools for the Scrum community, top to bottom, they're Scrum, but that's because that's their line of business. I think it's more difficult to do if you're not within this particular discipline space. Any other questions? Yep.